And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up, right here on AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
Good evening, Peter. It's another busy week in MMA. 2 UFC shows and World Series of Fighting all this weekend.
Absolutely, and a great UFC 181 pay-per-view as well. And
one of the best of the year.
It's up there. The main card we saw, the only decision was the main event, and pretty explosive and controversial fights. We'll get into that in just a few minutes. And we got some big news. A big pro wrestler has signed with the UFC. Fandango. No, wait. That's not in my notes.
No, all I can say about the guy they signed is don't call him Phil.
Yeah, Phil CM Punk Brooks has signed with the UFC, and that's obviously our big story of the week because that's right in our wheelhouse, Stevie. I heard rumors about this from different sources. I heard some other people. You heard
it from Front Row Brian on Twitter, and you asked me if he was reliable, and I told you yes.
Yeah, and then I went to some other people that have been on this show and what have you, off the record, and said, is there any truth to this? And they all said, wait, just wait, is basically the consensus I got from 3 or 4 people I was talking about. Like, there is... To put it mildly, Stevie, I was told basically where there's smoke, there's fire. And just something's going on, but we can't say or don't know anything official yet. So just hang on to your hat is what I was told by a few people. So I had some inkling this was going to happen.
I think we could say we had an inkling this was going to happen all the way back in 2013 when I interviewed Dana White after the Condit versus Campman 2 fight, and he talked about CM Punk then.
Yeah, absolutely. The seeds were planted back then. I think it really came to a head at the press conference they held. The time is now. There was rumors GSPR Brock might make a return, but the CM Punk to UFC chatter really started to pick up under the radar a little bit more than usual. And
they were trying to get the deal done for that press conference. They just couldn't put ink to pen fast enough because the lawyers were still hammering things out.
Do you think he'll do the it's clobbering time on his way to the cage?
I have no idea. We're not even going to see him fight for at least a good 4 to 6 months, so
yeah.
The time to speculate is not now.
But the one question I'll have for you before we go to UFC 181, because I found this news really dwarfed UFC 181 during the show, because at the end of the night, everybody was talking CM Punk, Phil Brooks, whatever. They weren't talking about the 2 title fights.
I wouldn't say it overshadowed, but it got the mainstream media talking more than the fights themselves did, because they love to pick up on a story of a wrestler goes to fighting or a fighter goes to wrestling. That gets mainstream media talking every time.
Now, the question I have for you, and some people already answered this, but I want your opinion on it. Does he fight at 170 or does he go up to 185?
I think for a competitive advantage, he probably goes to 170.
You don't think he'll do 185?
He was already small by WWE World Champion standards, which was something that was often held against him. Like, yeah. You can't pick up a guy the size of Brock Lesnar and do the go to sleep? That's ridiculous. Well, okay, you could say it, but in the fake world of pro wrestling, you can make anything believable. However, in the real world of mixed martial arts fighting, he's going to want to fight it at a competitive weight. So he's not going to be fighting guys the size of Anderson Silva or Brock Lesnar.
I don't see him going heavyweight, obviously.
Or light heavy. He would go middleweight or welterweight, and I favor welterweight.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think he'd be a great welterweight. However, he said he's trying a test cut this week, and I guess they'll go from there. I think he's leaning more towards the 185, but if the test cut goes in and he's able to shed that weight to make 170, you're right. The competitive advantage is there. He would definitely be better at 170 with his skill set. I mean, his jiu-jitsu, he's
a Gracie student. He has been for a while now, so his ground game is legit, but it's the striking we have to worry about.
But the one that surprises me about this story is the people lining up to Joe Rogan asking for this fight.
Well, it started before the announcement because Phil Baroni came out of the woodworks and challenged him.
Yeah, Phil Baroni did that and people thought he was just crazy, but no, I guess not so crazy. But I'm confused. Is Joe Rogan last name Silva, not Rogan?
No, but who else are they going to talk to? Because Joe Silva isn't going to book matches, so of course they're going to talk to Joe Rogan.
Who's the matchmaker in UFC?
I know, but he's not going to take demands from the public or demands from other
Well,
fighters. He's going to do what he and Lorenzo and Dana think is best for business. So if you're going to speculate, why not talk to Joe Rogan? He has a podcast. He loves to shoot the shit. You know, that's his forte. That's what he'll do.
And we'll get to Rogan's podcast in the news. There's a really weird story. We'll get to that. That's a teaser for later. But the last note before we go on to UFC 181 that really is troubling me is, who do you put him up against? I know it's 170, 185. Okay, that take that out of the equation just for a second. Do you have someone who has UFC experience? Or do you have to fight someone who makes their debut as well?
No, Dana already answered this. He said they would put him against a fighter equal in stature to him, which means a 0-0 fighter. So
a no-name UFC fighter, so a guy from Bellator or World Series of Fighting, perhaps, trying to make the UFC roster, so to speak?
No, I think they would just find a guy from a well-known camp like AKA or the Black Zillions, but who hasn't had a fight. They would put him against a guy that's trained but has no pro fights. They would do the same. You know, one guy with training and no pro fights against another guy with training and no pro fights.
Now, obviously this fight is going to be on pay-per-view.
Yeah, or if it's not, it'd be on a Fox card, like a UFC on Fox.
I don't think they're going to waste this fight on a free TV. I think they're definitely going to put this on pay-per-view.
Oh, and the hot rumor is July. They're talking about this fight could happen at the convention in July.
Oh, the fight week. International Fight Week.
Right.
Wow. Do you put this on the pay-per-view card, or do you put this on, like, the prelim main event?
I think he's too big of a name to be on the prelims. Even though you can't main event a pay-per-view with a guy with a 0-0 record, just because of who he is, he gets the opening fight on a pay-per-view.
Wow, that's a big spot, though.
Well, hey, Brock Lesnar got onto pay-per-view with his first couple of fights, so I don't think it's that unprecedented.
Yeah, but the comparisons to Brock and CM Punk are just going to be everywhere until July.
I realize that, and we're also talking about two completely different skill sets. We're talking about a decorated All-American Division I wrestler versus a guy who never did collegiate wrestling at all. So, Punk has a bigger mountain to climb than Brock.
But I can't remember CM Punk ever being seriously injured either.
Well, unless you count that huge staph infection that nearly killed him.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm taking that out of the equation. There's no, like, knee injuries, shoulder injuries. Like,
he had quite a few knee injuries. If you listen to those Colt Cabana podcasts, he was getting his knees wrecked all the time.
I was actually just about to say, I have those on my tablet right now. I'm starting to listen to them tomorrow, so I'm in for a treat.
He details his injuries in amazing and sometimes graphic detail, and picks apart Ryback for causing a lot of them.
Oh, God. That would explain the memes I saw. Anyways, we should move on. UFC 181, we've delayed this long enough. From the Mandalay Bay Event Center in Las Vegas, Nevada, the attendance, 96,17. Total gate, just under 2.5 million. 2 title fights in the main and co-main events, respectively. So, big night. And let's start with the prelims on the Fight Pass. Both went to a decision, with Clay Collard and Sergio Pettis winning their respective fights. Big surprise, no surprise, what do you think?
Clay Collard had some good momentum going in, so I'm not surprised that he did well against Alex White. And Sergio Pettis, that was a really close fight. It was a fight of the night contender. The Crowbar Hobart went in there and gave him everything he had, but Pettis just barely edged it out.
And actually, Pettis and Hobart did win fight of the night.
So yeah, they were very deserving of it. It was back and forth. I wouldn't go so far as to call it rock'em sock'em, but they each had their moments, they each had their shine, and they were both going for it really hard.
Moving on to Fox Sports 1, a Bulldog choker and Raquel Pennington a victory over Ashley Evans Smith.
I want to complain about Fox Sports 1.
Oh, here we go.
Well, you saw it, didn't you? You know what I'm going to say.
The floor is yours.
All right. So at the end of the round, Pennington has Ashley Evans Smith on the ground, and she's going for a choke. She gets the Bulldog choke on. She's pulling on it really tight. Evans Smith looks like she might tap, looks like she might go unconscious, looks like she might try to survive till the end of the round. And They get to the 5-minute mark, the horn, whatever the sound, and the referee is pulling Pennington off, and they cut the commercial right away. We don't see if Evan Smith is out cold. We don't see if she tapped. They don't give us the replay. They don't even wait 1/2 of 1 second. They immediately go to commercial, and then we come back from commercial, and the fight's over.
To the back. Wait,
why could they have waited like 3 or 4 seconds to at least show us that Ashley Evans Smith did a face plant when they pulled Pennington off her? Because we saw that on the replay after commercial. She went face down, out cold, but they cut the commercial so fast you couldn't tell.
It was very interesting to see the quick trigger to the commercial. I'm thinking perhaps the show's producer on Fox Sports 1 was a little anxious to go to commercial and wasn't a fan of the sport.
I wonder, because whatever he was doing, he was not respecting the fact that there was the possibility this fight was over, and left us all sitting there wondering because they had Bud Light commercials to show.
Well, they got bills to pay.
I know they got bills to pay, but come on, wait 2 freaking seconds so we can see if the fight's over or not.
We move on to Corey Anderson beating Justin Jones via unanimous decision.
Yeah, it was a good performance. Not really surprised, as the Ultimate Fighter veteran has a lot of potential, so a good performance for him.
Josh Saman beating Eddie Jordan with a head kick.
Gordon, not round. Jordan, and holy crap, what a head kick. This is, on your list of amazing finishes of the year, this got to be top 5.
It was foot and ankle, I think, that went right into his mush.
And he went down like a building with demolition. It was just, It was an explosion, and he fell and was out. Out. Like, oh my God. I hope he's not dead out.
Yeah, it was pretty scary when the thud just boom, you're like, uh-oh.
And the look on Josh Saman's face, because he was throwing a left after he landed that head kick, and the left just grazed the guy because he was already falling, so he couldn't land it, but he saw him falling down, and he's like, oh my God, I might have killed the man.
Now, my memory isn't what it used to be, I'll admit to that, but wasn't Josh the one who got knocked out by Uriah Hall with that scary knockout?
Well, he was on TUF Live. I'm trying to remember if it was Uriah Hall or not, but I think you're right about that.
Maybe it's gone full circle now. He has a devastating knockout.
Well, either way, it's a hell of a comeback for him. He's had a very rough year. We won't go into all the details. He mentioned some of that on the live broadcast, but to say this is a career renaissance for him after a very hard knock life in the last year, it's definitely an understatement.
Yeah, I know. It was, I remember when he was an Ultimate Fighter, it was something where this guy, he could go either way, you know what I mean? It's almost one of those fighters where you're like, he could be really good or he might just flame out. You're not 100% sure. But I'm really happy that he won this fight, and what a way to win, and definitely his prospects are very much in bloom for 2015.
Right, and I don't think this takes anything away from Eddie Gordon either, because you know what? Sometimes this sort of thing happens in a fight. Sometimes you just run into a brick wall. It doesn't mean Eddie Gordon is any less skilled or that he wasn't what he showed on The Ultimate Fighter. It just wasn't his day because he got hit with a very perfect, a scintillatingly perfect head kick, a 1 in a million head kick.
Yeah, no, it was Adam Sella that got beat by Uriah Hall in the first round.
That's right. Okay, so anyway,
and then went to the semifinals and got beat by Kelvin Gaston.
That's fine, but let's move on to the controversial main event of Fox Sports 1. I know you've got plenty to say about this.
Man.
Can you really fault Favor, though? That's my question to you, because he didn't know what he had done. He went for the kill. That's what you're supposed to do.
You're trained to go for the kill. I get that. But it's almost, it goes back to the argument of, if fighters wear certain gloves, will the eye poke be non-existent?
You can't do that, though, because you take away the fingering of the gloves, you're taking away the grappling that they do for takedowns. You can't do that.
So this is going to be an issue till the cows come home.
It's never going to be settled. All I can say is, in my heart and in my view of the fight from watching it, Uriah Faber certainly didn't do this on purpose. It was accidental. It's the referee's fault, not Faber's. The referee should have called time and given Francisco Rivera time to recover from the eye poke. He didn't do it. Referee's fault, not Faber's. Let the decision stand.
Well, the decision is Faber wins via submission, a bulldog choke, the second one of the night, second round, minute 34, and Rivera's camp has already is planning to protest.
They're not going to win the protest. They've never overturned a fight for a referee's mistake. They've overturned fights for guys doing illegal things or getting, drug enhanced performances, but they're not going to overturn it for a referee's mistake.
Do you remember who the referee was off the top of your head?
I think it was Mario Yamasaki.
Well, he's pretty good though.
Yeah, he usually doesn't make mistakes. He may just not even had the right view of it.
Some referees we give the benefit of the doubt. I think we're going to do it in this case. But there's certain referees out there, Stevie, you and I both don't say her name, that, they always make the bad calls. Mm. It seems like we're always talking about their screw-ups on a week-by-week basis. But
like Carrie Hatley. That's another one.
Damn it, I knew you were going.
Well, you said not to say her name, so I said Carrie Hatley's name instead.
There you go. We go on.
Card. Yes, Tony Ferguson and Abel Trujillo. Kukui versus the Killa.
Rear naked choke win by Ferguson. Second round, 4 minutes, 19 seconds. Ferguson, another one of those guys that might make a big splash in 2015.
I think so too, and I predicted the win going in, so I'm satisfied, although I honestly thought he'd do it with his hands. I thought he'd knock him out.
Yeah, we'll get to another fight later on that we expected it to go one way with a certain technique, and it was a different story altogether, but we'll get there.
Right. But we won't have much to say about Todd Duffy and Anthony Hamilton, because that ended quick.
No, you blink, you missed it.
And didn't I say that Anthony Hamilton was not in his league? I believe I used those words.
Yes, you did. And when it comes to Duffy, if you're surprised that Duffy won this fight, you need your head checked.
Yeah, or you got knocked out the way Hamilton did. One or the other.
Pretty much. Travis Brown beating Brendan Schaub, TKO, late in the first with only 10 seconds left. We're going to talk about Schaub later. This is what I talk about the Joe Rogan podcast news, because it was a bad situation. I don't want to get at this part of the show, but stay tuned for that. Travis Brown just outclassed him here.
Absolutely. Again, two guys that really weren't on the same level. The hybrid Schaub is a middling heavyweight who got into the game late and is not able to compete on the level of a guy like Hoppa Brown.
No, God no. Hoppa Brown, I think
he's now right up there in contention for a title shot. He's on the cusp.
You think he's on the cusp? I don't know. I think. See, I think I said this before, but I'm going to put Hoppa Brown in his next fight against the winner of this weekend's JDS fight against Miocic, and the winner of that fight gets the next shot at the champion.
I think that's fair. I think that's reasonable. But I'm saying number 3 in the heavyweight class with a impressive stoppage. If there's somebody injured or unavailable for a main event, he's right in there in that mix.
Yeah, but do you really give Brown as much credit here for beating Schaub, who, was really outclassed here?
I do, because he earned his way up to it before he fought Schaub. It's not like Hoppa Brown has been fighting scrubs. I mean, he beat Josh Barnett, he beat Alistair Overeem, he beat Gabriel Gonzaga. He's been beating real guys. But
who is a higher level fighter in your opinion, Brendan Schaub or Stipe Miocic?
Miocic, no question.
Okay. I find this fight, people are saying, oh, Brown, totally destroyed him. I'm like, yeah, but Schaub really,
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying Dos Santos and Miocic is a more important fight short term, but I'm saying long term that Brown is number 3, and if they need an injury replacement, he's got the record to indicate that he can go in there and get the job done.
It's funny, I don't remember seeing Schaub ranked in the heavyweight rankings, though.
Well, no. But, an impressive win is an impressive win, whether you beat a guy that's ranked or not, and that was an impressive win.
It was impressive, I'll give you that. Let's continue the string of impressive wins here. Anthony Pettis defending his title against Gilbert Melendez. Second round, minute 53, and Melendez is forced to tap out to a guillotine choke.
Definitely not the technique we expected would end the fight.
No, we expected more of a stand-up game when it comes to Pettis, but he surprised us all with that guillotine, and it was in deep. I mean, Melendez, he's very apt and very knowledgeable on escapes, but...
Yeah, this is a Cesar Gracie guy. He's not going to tap out to anything easy. If you get a technique on him, you're really going to have to go balls to the wall with it, and Pettis did.
If you earn a victory via submission against a Cesar Gracie guy, you freaking earned it.
Yeah, Pettis earned this one in spades. You talk about highlight reel finishes. We talked about the Eddie Gordon getting knocked the hell out by Josh Saman kick. This submission is up there in that league. It's the same category of he just choked the hell out of him. Wow.
Now, I didn't see the post-fight for this, but did they give Pettis any, black belt to wear on his neck or anything like they do when certain fighters win via submission?
I don't even remember. All I remember is Pettis talking about how he was proving everybody wrong because he'd been out for a year, people were doubting him, people were talking about his injuries, and he's like, can you doubt me now? I just beat the second best guy in the world. I think that proves I'm the best guy in the world.
Well, you look at the rankings, and Melendez actually goes down to number 2 after this loss.
Well, he's going to have to earn his way back up again, which is time's running out for Melendez to do that, so good luck to him.
And, of course, number 1 is now Nurmagomedov. So, he's still injured, I believe, right? So, do you rematch Melendez and Pettis? I don't think so. Number 3 is Dos Anjos. Number 4 is the Cowboy. Number 5 is someone Pettis knows quite well in Benson Henderson.
Yeah, I don't think they're going back to Henderson anytime soon. I think if you're not able to put Nurmagomedov in the fight, it's definitely Dos Anjos.
Not Cerrone?
I think Cerrone would have to beat somebody above him to get the title shot.
Fair enough. Main event, Johnny Hendricks defending his welterweight championship against ruthless Robbie Lawler, and the winner via split decision and new welterweight champion, ruthless Robbie Lawler.
It's his own fault for coasting in the 5th round.
Now, people are saying this is because of Hendricks' weight cut to get back to welterweight.
No, I don't think it's the weight cut. I think it's the fact that Hendricks thought he had it in the bag and he could pad out the 5th round and get the decision, and Lawler turned it up in the later part of that round and really rocked him to him. So I don't think anybody but Hendricks is to blame for this. I think it's not the weight cut. I don't think it's the skill. I think it's just that he was trying to coast and he got caught.
Now, people are calling, the Dolce diet. I swear to God, Stevie, I saw some more than one person bro science.
Okay. Meaning what?
Meaning Dolce diet isn't all cracked up what it's cracked up to be. Like, basically, it's not what basically, it's a poser. It basically doesn't work. It's like all those other diets, you know what I mean? Like, doesn't prove anything. Well, you're on the Dolce diet, but you're fading in fights in the 5th round. So, I don't know. I think I don't know if I want to see this rematch or not. I mean, it was a very close fight. Judges score, split decision. One of the judges 48-47 for Hendricks here. I actually had it, 40, what did I have it?
You didn't have it 49-46, did you?
I don't think so. I think I had 3 rounds to 2 for Lawler, but I'll have to double check my notes.
The 49-46 for Lawler seemed pretty outrageous to me.
Yeah, but why every time we're talking about Hendricks, we're talking about judges?
It seems to be the way things are going, and I know you said that he needed to not let it go to the judges this time, and boy, were you right about that, but not for the reasons you thought.
No, I really wanted Hendricks. If he was going to win this fight, he had to go back to the knockout power. I mean, we're tired of seeing him go to the judges. And this is why, quote, you never leave it to the judges.
And it's not that Hendricks doesn't have knockout power. He rocked Lawler several times during the fight. Again, I point to the 5th round as being he thought he was ahead and went into cruise control. It wasn't that he ran out of gas. It wasn't the cut. It wasn't the Dolce diet. It was a bad mental mistake on his part.
But I'm sorry. I really don't like that idea of coasting in the 5th round of a championship fight because you think you might have won it on the scorecards.
I know.
To be a champion in the UFC, you have to want it. Simple as that.
Well, you know what we always say, you learn more from a loss than a win? This is one for him to learn from.
He's going to learn multiple lessons from this one. Never give up.
No doubt. Never assume anything in a fight ever, especially with judges.
What was that lame movie? Never give up, never surrender.
That wasn't a lame movie. Galaxy Quest was awesome. Best parody of Star Trek ever.
It's up there. Now we move on to the Ultimate Fighter TUF 20 finale happening this Friday night at the Palms Casino in Las Vegas. Stevie, as we talk about this show, we're going to preview it, yet we don't know the two fights. They're technically to be announced versus to be announced.
Yes, the two finalists will face each other, and the two runners-up will also face each other. But we do know who the four women are, so we can take an educated guess, but we can't tell you the matchups for certain. We can only tell you that there are four fighters that are qualified to move on to the semifinals and possibly the finals. They are number 1, Carla Esparza, number 4, Jessica Penne, number 7, Rose Namajunas, and number 14, Randa Marcos.
So number 14 has a chance to win it all.
And she was put in that position by getting an upset in the very first fight televised on the show.
Exactly. And the thing is, this is where seeding, we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago now with the Reebok thing, where rankings are getting to be more and more important. And in this situation, you know, you have a fighter who's ranked 14, but she has a real shot of making the finals.
Mm-hmm. And, for all we know, she did. I mean, they did interviews at UFC 181, and everybody had to be really hush-hush about what they said, because obviously this was taped a while ago, so the women who were on the show know, but they can't let it leak to the public.
Dana White knows.
Yeah, Dana knows, they know, but none of them could
Oliver
say
knows.
No. I'm not even going to make that joke anymore. That's been beaten to death.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where time will tell after tonight's show who the two finalists are, and basically what the also ran final, I guess you could be, or the other semifinal, or whatever you want to call it.
If I was a betting man, I would bet on it being Carla Esparza versus Rose Namajunas in the finals.
That would be the smart money. I don't know if you can bet on TUF though.
Well, you could bet on the show once the finals are determined. I'm sure there are sports books who will take it.
Yeah, but as far as the fights on the show, I don't think legally you can bet on a predetermined fight, though. No. Like, you already know the outcome. I mean, it's...
Oh, well, you could do that with WWE. What are you talking about?
Okay. Yeah, but... Okay. A little sidetrack here. When Proline first started here in Ontario... You know, the sports lottery, you pick like 3 games, and if you get all 3 right, you win money, right?
Yeah, you've told me about it.
Well, when they first started it, they actually started with soccer as well, right? Mm-hmm. But they didn't take into consideration the time difference. So people were winning huge sums of money because, well, the game already played, but they didn't adjust for time.
They didn't figure out that people were going to watch it via satellite, or that they were going to get the results off the internet. How did they not think of that?
It was in the first like day or two of the adding soccer to Proline. They didn't figure it out, right?
That's just dumb. That's incompetence.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was an urban legend, but when I heard that story, I was like, ooh, they should have looked into that. Ooh. Or maybe there was an error with the lottery machine, which didn't lock out the game after it started.
Oh, all I can say is urban legend, because to me that sounds way too much like an episode of MASH.
MASH?
Yeah, you've watched MASH, haven't you?
We dating ourselves right now.
But seriously, they did this in an episode of MASH because Winchester found out the results of the 1955-56, whichever one was the famous one where the Brooklyn Dodgers and the Giants were playing for the pennant on the last day of the season, and he found out the results way in advance, and he was taking bets on the action because he knew he would win.
Oh man, that's weird. That's messed up. Anyways, back to what we're talking about. Ultimate Fighter on Friday night. We got 2 women's strawweight fights here, and a champion will be crowned. However, we do have 3 other fights on the main card, and they're quite intriguing, in fact.
Yeah. Little Heathen Jeremy Stevens and Charles Oliveira in a fight that's definitely going to have some ranking implications, as we like to say, because Oliveira is number 14 at featherweight, and Stevens is number 10.
Exactly. KJ Noons fights Darren Cruikshank, and Joe Proctor fights Yancy Medeiros. So there's some good fights here. I mean, yes, we're both hardcore fans, but I mean, those are some interesting fights.
And the prelims are pretty stacked up as well, because all the women who aren't in the finals or the semifinals, with one exception, are fighting in the prelim bouts.
Yeah, we talked about this off air, but Justine Kish isn't going to be fighting because of a knee injury, completely tearing her ACL. And replacing her will be the debuting Korean bantamweight fighter who's stepping up to strawweight, Si Hee Ham. She's the first Korean female fighter in the UFC.
And she's got quite a record, too. She's 15-5 overall.
So that's a great opportunity for her, and it's a great move by the UFC to bring in someone with a decent record to prove that, you know, I belong here too.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of fights on here I'm looking forward to. A lot of veterans of Invicta that are going to be fighting, like Lisa Harris and Felice Herrig. That's going to be a great fight. Rowdy Beck Rawlings, formerly Beck Hyatt, taking on Heather Jo Clark, and Tisha Torres and Angela Magana. So there's some great fights on here.
Which fight on the prelims is really, is like the fight to watch for here?
Well, actually, it might even be the Fight Pass fight, because Alshon Daly and Alex Chambers, that fight won't be any joke. I mean, Chambers is a little up there along in the tooth, but because of that, she's really serious about her career and probably works as hard, if not harder, than any of the other women in the house. And Daly is a very seasoned veteran who I've seen going all the way back to Bellator, back when they still had a women's division. I mean, this girl is a veteran. She knows her shit.
Now, you watched every episode of this season. Is there one fight on the prelims where basically these two women like hate each other and you can't wait to have them in the cage here?
Oh, that would be pretty much Herrig and anybody, because she gets on all of their nerves. So.
Oh man, Herring versus the roster. There you go. Fight.
Pretty much. Or Heather Jo Clark, because a lot of people thought she had an attitude, but whatever. It'll be fun fights.
Do you think she had an attitude?
I don't know. They edit the show in the way that makes it more dramatic, so you don't know if little incidents are being overplayed or big incidents are being overlooked. They're trying to create faces and heels, heroes and villains on that show, so you always got to watch it with a skeptical eye towards the editing.
Now, before we move on to this Saturday's show, I have a very serious question to ask you. Have they approached you yet about voting for this weight class?
I assume it'll just be added to the available weight classes that we rank. I never heard anything different about it. I mean, women's bantamweight wasn't originally in the rankings, as I recall, and they added that. So they'll just, whenever they debut a new division, we'll end up voting on it.
So after this, maybe on next week's show, you can tell us that it's been added. We'll find out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there are 2 UFC shows this weekend, so I'll have plenty of chances to rank things.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about this show, UFC on Fox from Phoenix, Arizona at the U.S. Airways Center. Main event, man, this is a heavyweight card because 3 of the 4 fights are heavyweight fights.
Yeah, you're not saying that as a double entendre. No. It's literally a heavyweight card.
And look at the one lightweight fight, the co-main event. It's Rafael dos Anjos against the one and only Nate Diaz. I mean, my God.
Yeah, this is a stacked card. This is an insanely stacked card.
And it's free. 100% free.
Yeah, I've got no complaints. I will take a free card that's this loaded up any day of the week. The only problem for me is that I'm already committed to covering the World Series of Fighting for MMA Mania, so I'm probably going to miss it. Peter, you want to step up and cover this one for the site?
Sadly, I will be getting my drink on at this company Christmas party.
Well, that's what I'll be doing on Friday night, which is why I'm covering World Series of Fighting on Saturday.
Well, we'll get some results on the site for sure, and I'm sure I'll catch the replay, but let's start. Man, where do we start with this one?
I almost think we have to skip the Fight Pass because this is just too big of a card. I mean, you can mention that Henry Cejudo is making his bantamweight debut after he flunked out in his last attempt to get on a card. But other than that,
though?
I think he'll make Van win. I'm not worried about it. But let's move on to FS1, because that's the stuff we need to talk about.
But before we get there, one quick question. He's the third UFC Olympic gold medalist, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Who were the other two?
Let me see. Gold medalists before him. I know there have been Olympic competitors, like Ronda Rousey was a bronze in judo, but she wasn't gold.
I'm trying to think who the other two gold ones are, because I saw that on one of my notes I have written down for this show, like third gold medalist, and I was like, wait a minute, what are the other two? Now I'm thinking about
are you sure you don't mean third Olympic medalist? Because that would be easier to believe. I can't think of gold medalists off the top of my head. Like Rulon Gardner never fought in UFC. Kurt Angle never fought in UFC. Cael Sanderson hasn't fought in UFC. I mean, what are we talking about here?
I'm trying to think who would be. Kevin Jackson and Mark Schultz.
Okay, well, that would be it then, so let's move on.
There you go. It's the first Olympic gold since UFC bought the rights, Azufa, since that purchase, so.
Right, since it was transferred over.
Yeah, but still, that's pretty, Kevin Jackson and Mark Schultz aren't exactly big names in UFC lore, so.
No, not really, which is why I think we're wasting too much time on this.
Alright, fair enough. Moving on to the Fox Sports 1 card, man. We already said it's a stock card, Steve.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, very first fight is Joe Ellenberger versus Brian Barberena, so Jake Ellenberger's brother trying to make it 2 in a row.
And, Brian Barberena is not exactly a slouch. I mean, this could be a good fight.
I expect so. And in fact, I have even higher expectations for the middleweight bout because former guest of the show, Ed Shortfuse Herman and Derek Brunson, that is going to be a slobber knocker.
Oh yeah. No, this is get your popcorn ready type of night.
Mm-hmm. And then Jamie Varner and Drew Dover in a lightweight fight.
Now
hopefully Varner comes in injury free and ready for this bout.
Yeah. What about Joe Riggs and Ben Saunders?
That's going to be, well, wait a minute. Is Riggs healed up? Is he ready to go?
He's good to go.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that because we know he had that nasty gunshot injury, so.
Yeah, he was cleaning his gun and it went off. I mean, the joke writes itself.
Mm-hmm.
But, former WC champ, he's fought in Strikeforce, Bellator, Pro Elite, King of the Cage. Very, very experienced fighter here. And, he's gonna be fighting Ben Saunders, who also, has a lot of fights under his belt too. So this could be like one of those fights where it's really going to be really boring or really interesting.
I just wonder if Riggs wins the bout, does Bellator try to bring him back as like UFC competitor and the Bellator fight master? Do they try to bring him back after that, or do they just figure that's a lost cause?
No, if he signs the UFC, they can't go back to Bellator.
We've seen guys jump back and forth before.
No, after a win.
That's what I mean, is like, it's kind of ironic for them that he's the Bellator fight master and he'll probably pick up a win in UFC and then it'll be like, oh, so much for that show.
See, I find Fight Master was a Bjorn creation, not, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's the Scott Coker era now anyway. We're not getting stuff like that anymore. But hey.
It's too bad, because it was a good show.
It was an interesting show. It had its moments, and the coaches were entertaining, but I don't know. I will not even delve into whether or not I would right now, because I want to talk about Claudia Delia and Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
You're no more with this than I would.
You don't remember Joanna Jędrzejczyk?
The name escapes me at the moment.
She had that great fight with Juliana Lima at the UFC on Fox, Lawler versus Brown. It went the full 3 rounds. It potentially was fight of the night. It was a slobber knocker of a fight.
Oh, yeah, okay, now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, it took me a while to remember that one, yeah. And, what about the main event on Fox Sports 1, Willie Gates and John Morega?
I expect that'll be a good fight, and the flyweights always bring it. I can't say I know Gates, but we certainly know Moraga's track record, because he's ranked UFC flyweight, and he's only guys that he's lost to are the best guys in the division. He lost to John Dodson and Demetrius Johnson, so anybody below that level, he's competitive with. Yeah,
I mean, we've seen fighters like that before, where it's like, the guy has 2 or 3 losses in a row, but look who's beat him.
Exactly. And in fact, The real key here is that he beat Justin Scoggins with a guillotine choke back in September, and Scoggins was being highly touted as the future of this weight division, and I think that win says a lot. It's a feather in John Moraga's cap.
Well, Willie Gates is on a 5-fight win streak. His last fight was wait a minute, that can't be right. November 6th at a show, TPF 21, All or Nothing. I'm looking over who wins and losses, see if any names pops out. I lost to Robbie Peralta back in 2008. He won a fight against Skylar Reeder in 2011, and the referee for that fight was one of your favorites, Stevie, Cecil Peoples.
Well, okay.
I always surprised when I see Cecil Peoples refereeing on stat sheets like that, you know?
He's been around for a long time.
Absolutely. We gotta talk about this main card. Gabriel Gonzaga against Matt Mitrione. Wow. Just wow.
This is the kind of fight that is, I wouldn't call it loser leaves town, because that would be overselling it a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's a fight for relevance in the weight class, because both these guys are beating the lower levels of the competition, but they're not rising up through the ranks.
It's 12 against 14.
That's what I'm saying. They need, whoever wins this fight is going to get momentum, and the other guy might be dropping out of the top 15.
I don't know if Gonzaga loses here, he gets dropped. I think he goes down maybe to 14, maybe 15. I don't think he gets dropped entirely out of that division. I think Mitrione lost, definitely. But if Mitrione wins here, you put him up, say, 2 spots. Mitrione against Overeem? Rothwell, maybe?
Yeah, he'd be in line for a much bigger opponent with a win.
Speaking of Overeem, he's fighting Stefan Struve. This I don't like. I do not like this fight at all because...
well, I like this fight because I was supposed to see Struve fight in July, and he had a panic attack and didn't make it to the fight.
I remember that. That was a really messed up situation, but...
I paid to see Struve, so at least this time I'm seeing him for free. I don't have to pay, since I already paid to see him once.
And Overeem lost here. Is that it?
Yeah. It almost has to be. I mean, okay, he's got a name, people know who he is, he's got the physique, everybody talks about it, but you gotta win.
You do?
He's not winning. He keeps getting blown up in the first round and then getting beaten.
I wonder what he'll look like at the weigh-ins, to be honest.
He'll look jacked. He always does.
Yeah. I don't know. I always the suspicions of Overeem's past, I mean... You know what I mean?
This is a guy, you don't have to talk about suspicions. He wasn't a heavyweight. He wasn't always a heavyweight. He used to fight at light heavyweight and middleweight. So that tells you how much muscle he's packed on.
Imagine if he sheds a few pounds and goes down to light heavy and challenges like John Jones.
That's never going to happen.
No. Stevie J with the Meltzer quote of the night.
Well, it's not even worth being attributed as a quote. It's just a statement of fact. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, no. Sunday main event, Rafael Dos Anjos against Nate Diaz.
One of these days I'm going to get you to say Dos Anjos.
One of these days, but not today. Diaz.
So if Diaz can stop talking about Reebok long enough to take this fight seriously.
Yeah, I'm really wondering where his head is at right now. I mean, he's definitely taking training serious. You know, when it comes to training, yeah, these guys are beasts in the gym, but they like to run their mouths too.
It's too many distractions for him as far as I'm concerned, and Dos Anjos has been at an elite level while Diaz and his brother have been on the sidelines for quite a while due to their contractual issues. I mean, we haven't seen Nate since November of last year, and Dos Anjos, in that same amount of time, since November of last year, let's see, who all has he beaten? He's beaten Jason High, Benson Henderson, and Donald Cerrone. Okay, so who's got the better record right now? It's Dos Anjos. Nate Diaz was sitting on the sideline doing nothing.
Here's the thing. If Diaz wins by submission, he'll break the tie and sit alone in second place for most submissions in UFC history.
Okay, well, that would be a hell of an accomplishment.
He holds the record with Frank Mir and Kenny Florian.
I'm picking Dos Anjos all the way in this.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
You don't think he slaps on a submission and Dos Anjos just gets, caught?
I don't think so. I think that being away for that long, I'm not saying the game has passed him by, but I think he's number 14 for a reason. He's not in the elite ranks of the lightweights anymore.
I think a win here by Dos Anjos gets him a title shot.
He's definitely knocking on that door, like I said about Travis Brown earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this fight before with Pettis and his Melendez fight. But, yeah, I think you're right about Cerrone not, he's number 4, but I don't think he'll get the next shot if Dos Anjos has a good performance here. And
Dos Anjos has a win over Cerrone, so that's the tiebreaker right there. Dos Anjos would get a shot before Cerrone would.
Now the main event, JDS against Stipe Miocic. Oh boy, this has so much potential in a lot of different ways because JDS wins, great. We got Kane at top, Verdum top, and then you got JDS cementing his number 2 status. We know he can't beat Kane. He did once, but I don't think it'll happen again. Maybe if Kane doesn't come back and Dana White strips him of the championship, do you make JDS and Verdum?
That would be interesting because JDS was the guy who sent Verdum packing from UFC the last time around before he went to Strikeforce, reinvented himself, and came back to UFC. JDS was the one who sent him out the door.
Exactly. You look at JDS's record, I mean, he's, 3-2 in his last 5 fights, but his 2
but those 2 are Cain Velasquez, and both of them were one-sided massacres.
Yeah, and you're talking about the first time they met, Fabricio and JDS. I was back at UFC 90 over 4 years ago, right? And he knocked him out in 80 seconds.
That was pretty much the ascendance of Junior Dos Santos to being like one of the top heavyweights in the world was that win.
Yeah, exactly. That put him on the map, and it's really scary to think this, Stevie, but that was his first fight outside of Brazil as a pro.
Yeah, we really didn't know what kind of man or fighter JDS was before that night.
And then boom.
Yeah, and then he just ran off like 10 wins in a row, right up to getting the UFC heavyweight title shot against Kane, and then he won it.
But then you look at a guy like Stipe Miocic, who 4-1 in his last 5 fights, his only defeat against Stefan Struve when he knocked him out back in the UK at UFC on Fuel TV back in those days in 2012.
That's right.
So, if Miocic wins here, you definitely move him ahead in the rankings, but do you put him ahead of Hapa Brown? Because JDS will go down. Do you move Brown and Miocic up 1 spot and JDS goes down 2? Do you have Hapa Brown fight Miocic?
You know what? If Miocic wins, I like that idea. Brown and Miocic would be a great number 1 contenders fight.
Wow. And have Verdum sitting cage side for it.
Of course.
Wow, that would be something, eh?
Yeah, I think I'll root for Miocic to win just on that basis. I'd like to see that happen.
All right, I'll go with Miocic on that. I think, JDS, I hate to say he's old, but he's not getting any younger.
Well, those 2 beatings by Cain Velasquez may have taken more out of him than we know. That's the other problem, because you don't take a 5-round beating like that at heavyweight and not lose something in the process.
And the scary thing is, in January, JDS will turn only 31 years old.
This is a sport where you can age fast.
Whew. I don't know, man. That's pretty insane, but it's gonna be a great show, and it's free on Fox starting at 8 o'clock. Of course, the Fight Pass fights and the FS1 fights, Sportsnet 360, they start earlier, but the main card starts at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central. So
that's absolutely right. So enjoy it, whether you live in the U.S. or Canada. You don't have to pay for this one. It's all yours.
And just to preview next week's show, we have another show to talk about. UFC Fight Night on the 20th of December with Yota Machida against CB Dalloway.
Well, hey, let's not forget to talk about World Series fighting on Saturday night, too.
Oh, yes. We have World Series of Fighting to talk about this weekend. I don't know who makes the schedules. Like, if World Series knew about when UFC is going to have their shows, I don't know if, how much...
by the way, Peter, sorry to interrupt you, but I got some breaking news for you.
Uh-oh. What?
Nate Diaz was a no-show at the UFC on Fox workouts today.
That could be nothing.
That could be nothing, but it's kind of interesting that UFC had no explanation for his failure to appear at the workouts.
Oh, boy. The way you say that, boss, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a thing. Usually when somebody isn't there, they're like, he was in training, or he's making a weight cut, or they have some reason why a guy wasn't there, but they probably didn't want to say, because they knew the real reason that he wasn't there was that he blew it off.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of interesting that people who make the schedules for these things can't get together and not agree. Let's not put all three promotions on the same day.
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't like it. I think it's MMA overload this weekend when it comes to UFC having two shows. Hey, let's have a show on the same weekend as that. No. You're splitting the atom, basically. You're gonna divide the hardcores from the hardcores, and that, doesn't work out so well. You're not gonna get as many eyeballs on your product. You want to be different? Don't have it on a weekend with two shows UFC is having.
I agree.
Now, looking at the main card, the main event, Rousimar Palhares against John Fitch for the welterweight title.
It's an interesting style matchup because Palhares, he lives and dies by those submissions. If he catches you, you're toast, but he doesn't have a great chin, so if you can catch him on the chin, he's toast. But then John Fitch isn't necessarily known for doing that.
John Fitch is, he's John Fitch, let's just say that.
Well, there's a reason that we use his name as a verb.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's, John Fitch is here,
I'm not predicting he's gonna Fitch Palhares. I have a feeling Palhares is gonna submit him.
You think so? He'll just catch him?
I think he'll catch him. I think Fitch will go in there thinking he can wrestle with him, and Palhares will drop down and grab a leg.
Well, what about Rick Glenn and Lance Palmer for the featherweight title?
This is a curious one for me because Glenn hasn't lost a fight since 2010. He is the featherweight champion of the World Series fighting. He beat Georgi Karakhanyan, a guy who does have a Wikipedia profile, but Glenn's profile was deleted for not being notable. How much more notable do you have to be than being the champion of a nationally televised promotion and not losing a fight since 2010? That's pretty notable to me.
Yeah, well, if he makes a transition to UFC,
then he'd be notable. Yeah, that's the thing. They're considering World Series fighting to not be as notable as UFC. That's their excuse.
But let me just rattle off a couple of names and let me know if you think he could beat them or at least have a competitive fight with, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Conor McGregor.
Yeah, he'd be competitive. I don't think he'd win, but he'd be competitive.
Cub Swanson?
Same. I don't know if he'd win, he'd be competitive.
Dustin Poirier.
Could possibly beat Poirier.
You think so? You think he's a top 5 fighter then?
I think on the right day he could beat Poirier.
I don't think he's beating Frankie Edgar.
No, probably not.
Ricardo Lamas, that's more of a coin flip.
I think if we go too far on this speculation, we're discounting Lance Palmer because Palmer is going to be upset-minded here. He's going to want to come in there and take the title from Glenn, and this guy's had a chance before. He was in the fight that crowned Karakhanyan the inaugural featherweight champion of World Series fighting, so Palmer has been on the cusp before.
Stevie, I'm confused with what you just said because what challenger in a title fight isn't upset hungry?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying Palmer is more hungry because he's already been all the way to a title shot before.
Yeah. No, with Glenn winning for so long, defending his title here, a win here, you gotta think he's on UFC's radar. I hate to think of World Series as a feeder promotion to the UFC, but
we've kind of seen it be that. We saw Rumble Johnson make his career renaissance in World Series fighting and then come back to UFC. That's kind of the way it goes.
But look, I mean, my point is, look at the flip side of this. Your main event has 2 former UFC talents at it.
Exactly. So you're either on the way up or on the way down, but either way in World Series of Fighting, you can either be a former UFC fighter or a future UFC fighter. That's pretty much the size of it.
Maybe our friend Gigi knows where this card is. It's at the McClellan Conference Center in Sacramento, California.
Yeah, I don't know where that is either, but I'm looking forward to recapping the fights on Saturday night because it's a stacked up card. They've got a very interesting 135-pound fight with an undefeated guy, Shaman Moraes, versus Gabriel Solorio. I think that'll probably be a big win for Shaman because he's finished 4 of his 6 fights by knockout. So I would expect that Solorio is like a setup guy for him to get an impressive win on TV. And then somebody you might recognize from The Ultimate Fighter, Gilbert Melendez's coach Josh Berkovic, has a featherweight fight against Brenton Hansen, who is 3 out of 4 in World Series fighting, so he'll try to make it 4 out of 5. And then the opener is a couple more familiar names. Lethal, Luis Gonzalez, and former UFC fighter Justin Buchholz.
That'd be a great fight to kick off the main card, but I'm interested in the main event of the prelims, CJ Levesque against Dave Huckabee.
Yeah, that should be a good one. Big Dave Huckabee will come out there swinging for the fences.
Yeah, he might rock him sock him here, so.
Could be.
Now, that's going to be World Series of Fighting. We've talked UFC. We got to talk the news. There's been a lot of talk over CM Punk coming to the UFC. It seems like it dominated the headlines coming out of that show. Obviously stay tuned to Angry Marks. If there's any news that breaks, I'm sure we'll talk about it either on our YouTube channel or on the website. But, you're still thinking it's July, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the talk.
Well, July, the fight weekend, I could definitely see that. As far as the most eyeballs, it's on pay-per-view, although you still think it should be on Fox.
No, I said if it wasn't on pay-per-view, that would be what they would do, because with a name brand like CM Punk, you want to get it in front of the most eyeballs possible. So if you're not making money with it on pay-per-view, you would put him in the main card of a Fox show just because of how many millions of people would tune in to see CM Punk fight. And that would be a lot.
Now I got a question for you. How many fighters do you follow on Twitter?
Oh, I couldn't even count. You'd have to look at my Twitter feeds and see the lists, because I have a Bellator list, I have an Invicta list, I have a general MMA list. I have lists for everything.
Apparently, Stephan Bonner, he almost got he didn't get arrested for DUI, but if you follow his Twitter, he should have been.
Oh, was he swigging from the bottle while he was celebrating his loss, or what? Tell me the story here.
Basically, he tweeted out saying he had been sober for 9 months until tonight. After getting pulled over, he said dipshit me is getting his first DUI and that he should have had a dozen by now. If you read the tweets he wrote, it goes from 9 months sober till tonight. Sorry, God. Holy shit, don't text and drive. I just got pulled over and said, sorry, officer. I had a few beers this morning. Well, dipshit me is getting his first DUI and is going to jail. Should have had at least a dozen by now, so be it. And then it just goes on and on and on. It's like...
I'm surprised the cop didn't take the phone from him.
Here's the thing. The last tweet was, April Fools is actually a true story from college. You guys are so gullible. Okay. Was that a cover-up? Or is he just trying to save face here?
I don't know. With Bonner, he's such a prankster and a comedian that I wouldn't put anything past him, really.
I don't know. Some fighters you give the benefit of the doubt, but Stephan Bonner, I mean, he's just trying to keep his name out there in MMA circles, but for the wrong reasons.
I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on this one. Let's move on.
There's talk that Sergio Pettis might be going back to flyweight after his win at UFC 181.
It was a tough fight for him, and again, we always talk about the competitive edge. If he can make it down to 125. That might actually be better because he's having a tough time at 135.
Now, American Top Team's been around for quite a while, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Can you believe this is the first champion in their ranks?
I suppose that every team gets their due sooner or later. It's not like the old days where Miocic had like 4 of the 5 UFC champions under their banner. That kind of thing doesn't happen anymore.
No, but we saw this with TJ Dillashaw, and Uriah Faber celebrating with him in like a coaching role when he won that belt, and it was their first championship, and now, American Top Team finally has a champion after how many years. So it's good to see the team's been out there for a while, finally getting some gold on their mantle, so to speak. But we move on to one of the more outspoken former UFC fighters, Wanderlei Silva.
Yeah, every other day he's got some sort of new gripe, and he also has a new mustache.
Yeah, I saw that. No.
Giving me a run for the money now.
Oh, jeez. Not going there, boss. That's a trap.
That's a trap.
It's a trap. I kick your ass in mustache anyways. Anyways, moving on.
Never
Wanderlei Silva is basically saying the criticism he said about UFC in turn made Dana White share the uniform revenue with the fighters. Like, it's because Wanderlei Silva said something that Dana goes, oh, actually, we should give some of this chunk of money to the fighters. Really?
I don't buy that.
He's trying to take credit for everything, so I don't know.
He's just disgruntled at this point. He's going to say anything that makes him look good and them look bad.
One of my favorite fighters, air quotes, favorite fighters, Ben Askren has commented on CM Punk's signing, saying it's strange, but it could be a blessing in disguise.
Could be.
Fight is set for UFC 182 next month. Rustam Khabilov has pulled out of his fight. Danny Castillo fights Paul Felder now.
Okay, well, we'll see how that goes.
Now, I know you like a good laugh, Stevie. I know you do. Overeem is calling his shot. He's doing the old Babe Ruth pointing over the left field stands. He said he's going to beat Stefan Struve in 30 seconds.
Yeah, if he can even reach up there and put a hand on him.
30 seconds. Okay, start the stopwatch. Go. No.
I honestly don't see it. In fact, I think the more likely outcome is 31 seconds, Stefan Struve submits him.
Yeah. They're remaking the infamous movie Kickboxer. George St. Pierre has a role in that one, and they've added a second fighter to its ranks. Gina Carano.
Yep, so, I posted the press release last night.
That's quite the 1-2 punch there, pun intended.
Yes, indeed. It's going to be a heck of a movie. I can't wait to see it.
Have they said when that movie comes out?
They're doing principal photography right now, so I don't think it'll be out till late 2015. All
right, we've teased this long enough. We got to talk about Joe Rogan's podcast with Brendan Schaub.
Yes, absolutely. Let rip the curtain off of this one and let it fly.
All right. So it was on Schaub's podcast, The Fighter and the Kid. Rogan was on there as a guest, but it was done with a video chat. And Schaub's co-host and Rogan were basically in a very serious tone, which led to I've heard a lot of podcasts in my day. This is one of the most awkward podcasts I think I've ever listened to and seen. Rogan and the co-host, they were basically saying Schaub should just retire. Like, dude, you're not an elite fighter. Like, stop it. Like, you're eating punches for a living right now. Like, no. I'm really having a hard time with this one because, you never want to see somebody get permanent brain damage.
No.
We never want to see that. Yes, it's a fight sport. Yes, people get injured. Yes, we don't know long-term effects. Like, look at oh man. So many fighters I could think off the top of my head. Muhammad Ali, I can't even think of any right now off the top of my head besides that, but,
Freddie Roach.
Yeah, Freddie Roach, thank you. I was thinking of a trainer actually, yeah. we don't know the long-term effects where the fighters are going to be in 20 years, but Schaub, if he keeps the way he's going, look at Chuck Liddell.
Well, that's why Pat Barry is not fighting in UFC anymore. It's because he was getting knocked out too many times too quickly by too many people.
Barry got kicked in the head in his kickboxing return. Remember that one in Glory?
Yeah, but at least in kickboxing he was better off than in UFC, because in UFC he was taking repeated traumatic brain injury.
The one thing that everybody's pointing out is Rogan said something that is quite curious, in that he said, man, you should just retire, open up your own clothing line. And a lot of people are pointing at this and laughing. Not laughing, but they're pointing at this and saying, didn't UFC just sign an apparel deal with Reebok?
Yeah, that kind of limits your opportunity to get your apparel in front of eyeballs, because everybody's going to be wearing the Reebok uniform.
Exactly. So, a very curious comment by Joe Rogan, but I think the best thing for Schaub to do, I'm not sure, well, maybe it is the best thing to do is retire. Maybe he can become a coach. Something that he doesn't have to be, like, eating punches, or, he can train. Coaches don't get beat up.
Depends on the training camp. Some of them like to go in there and take a beating and give a beating just to make their fighters better, but no, in his case, he could put on headgear and be a coach somewhere and probably be okay.
Exactly. Do you think this is the end of Schaub in UFC?
I wouldn't say that until the papers are signed and he's given his release, but I would say that Schaub should be legitimately concerned about his relevance and the fact that he's eating a lot of punches. It's, especially it's going to happen in every weight class. There are guys that are getting to the point where they have fragile chins and should retire. It doesn't matter if you're lightweight, middleweight, heavyweight, whatever. It happens to every weight class, because, look what happened to Jens Pulver. We knew that guy should have stopped fighting, and he kept fighting, and it wasn't good. It got ugly quickly, and we don't want to see that happen to Brendan Schaub.
No.
But you also have a really hard time saying what a fighter should or shouldn't do, because everybody has the right to make that own decision, and you can't take that decision away from a fighter. They have to come to that conclusion themselves, or they have to get to the point where nobody's going to license them. And unfortunately, if you have a name in this sport, you'll still get licensed somewhere.
Do you remember back in the day when fighters would train without headgear?
Yeah, that's how a lot of careers ended up shortened, like the Lion's Den. All those guys just went at it bare knuckle, no headgear, and a lot of them had shorter careers as a result of that.
What was the book I wrote? Was it Blood in the Cage, talking about Militich's fight camp, and basically you would just run the gauntlet of fighters?
There are still training camps that make guys run the gauntlet. They do it in a safer way and with headgear and protection nowadays, but the gauntlet has not gone away. That's still used by a lot of training camps.
But back then it was no headgear. Basically, there's a bucket for you to spit your blood into. You know what I mean? Like, it was some pretty gnarly stuff compared to what it is now.
Well, it's still gnarly. How many guys are not getting into title fights because they get injured before the fight in training camp? You're acting like it's a completely different sport, and the problem is that guys are still getting injured in training all the time. How many main events have we lost?
This year, last year, the year before, it's adding up.
Yeah, it doesn't really mean, just because it's better now doesn't mean that you aren't getting a pummeling in training, which is a lot of people are saying about CM Punk. Is this guy going to survive a training camp? That's the key here.
Let's move on to flyweight news. Or sorry, not flyweight, bantamweight, my bad. Brad Pickett is returning to the bantamweight division. Guess who he wants to fight?
I have no idea.
Takei Mizugaki.
Okay. I could see that.
That's a good fight. I know you have Fight Pass TV. Do you have an Apple TV?
No, I do not.
Oh, that's a shame, because Fight Pass is now available on Apple TVs, so that's pretty good if you're a Fight Pass subscriber.
Cool.
Let's see. Do you agree with Scott Coker's recent comments saying he's bringing the fringe fans back?
Well, I think there is some legitimacy to his, we lost the casual fans statement, because there has been so much MMA, as you were just saying. There's weekends where 2 or 3 shows are on the same night, and a lot of people just don't care about the fighters they don't know when there are that many fights. It all sort of bleeds together for them. They don't know Bellator from World Series of Fighting from UFC. This is like, there's fights on. Is there any guy I know? No, I don't care. So, Scott Coker's right that there are certainly casual fans out there who are not wowed by just fights. And if you create more of a spectacle and you put on names that they know and bring in people they care about, you're gonna get more action in terms of viewership than you would just putting on fights for the sake of fighting.
But I found Bellator's tournament format really had its fringe fans set in their promotion.
Yeah, but at the same time, were they getting much traction with the tournaments? You had hardcore fans that loved it, but I don't think you were getting anywhere with it that you would get the people back that weren't interested in fights anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but maybe it's run its course. I don't think we're going to see on a national level like Bellator is at. We're not going to see that tournament format anytime soon.
Well, Coker said that he won't rule out doing a tournament for the right reasons, but it'd have to be like the top 4 guys in a weight class and be like 1 and 4 and 2 and 3, and then the winners fight each other in the main event of the tournament. So
is he still in Strikeforce for the Grand Prix?
Yeah, he was the one behind the Grand Prix. So that's why I'm saying Coker won't rule out doing a tournament altogether, but he's not going to do multiple tournaments back to back overlapping each other the way the Bellator used to do.
All right, I just got a note here. Honey Jason is out of his next fight, UFC Fight Night 58 in Brazil. It'll now be Renato Canero against Tom Ninimaki.
Okay. Well, I know you like Ninimaki, so that's a good one for you.
Last thing here, going back to the Faber-Rivera fight.
Rivera. Please, Rivera.
He said Faber was getting frustrated. I could see it in his eyes.
Well, I don't know if that's true. I might be able to make the argument that Rivera won the first round, but the judges actually had it for Faber.
Yeah. So that's basically all the news I have. Is there anything in your list that we forgot to mention?
Nope, I think we should wrap it up there.
All right, what's on tap for Thursday night AMP?
TLC. We got to preview the pay-per-view on Sunday.
Is it TLCS now?
No, I refuse to even acknowledge that.
Oh, man. Did you guys talk about Kurt Angle?
I think we'll talk about him on Thursday.
Okay, fair enough. He made his decision this week, and WWE or TNA, and listen to AMP to find out.
Absolutely. So let's wrap it up with our plugs at Hardcore CDN, at AngryMarks, and anything else you want to throw out there.
Absolutely. And give us a shout on iTunes, rewind our past shows, and give her